Assalamu alaikum. Today I have brought you a beautiful video clip of Dr. Jeffery Lang, a Canadian doctor, how he reverted to Islam. Very uplifting and inspirational video. Please share it with your friends. May Allah give you sawab for spreading the word. Don't forget to share, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to like. Thank you for watching. Here's the video.
You're like, are you nuts? I didn't even think he knew there was a mosque there. I quickly just walked out of the church, stood in now the sun was breaking. It felt such a relief to be outside. And then I thought, I'll just go try that stairway down beneath the church in the basement, underground. So I went, walked over, stood there looking at it. I stood there for about 5 seconds. And then finally I said, okay, let's go. So I start walking down the stairs. Every foot closer, every step closer, the more weak my knees got. I walked 7 miles a day. Back in those days, I actually used to run 10 kilometers to 10 miles a day. I had very strong legs. They were shaking by the time I got to the doorway. I reached out to grab the door, my hand was shaking. I turned around. I was in a panic. I turned around. I rushed to the top of the stairs, stood there, and I thought to myself, Jeff, are you an idiot? You go in and out of doors every day at this university. Get a grip. At most, there's nobody there or there's students down there. What's on the stairs? I turn around, head back down the stairs. Same experience. My knees are getting weaker. Try to reach the door. My hand's sweating now. It's shaking. My head's... I couldn't do it. I turn around again. I walk quickly back up the stairs, catch my breath. Take some deep breaths. And then finally I said to myself, I'll never get down those stairs. So I looked up to the heavens. I don't know why we human beings do this, but we often do this in this sort of situation. I looked up to the heavens, and it was majestic and beautiful. The clouds were dissipating, the sunlight was starting to shine through them. I looked up to the heavens, and it made something I hadn't made in many years, a voluntary prayer. And I said, oh God, if you are really there, because I wasn't quite sure, give me the strength to go down those stairs and go inside that door. And then I stood waiting. I was waiting for a sign. I would have settled for anything. A bolt of lightning, a bird land on my shoulders, an earthquake. San Francisco, we have earthquakes all the time. I would have taken it. I'm waiting for some sort of sign. What an idiot I am, but it's true. I was waiting for a sign. No sign. I turned around, walked down the stairs, put my hand on the door, pushed it open, and there were 2 students inside. And they looked at me and they said, can we help you? Immediately, I got nervous. And I started calling out names of Muslims I knew. Is Mahmoud or Omar or Suraj here? They looked at me again like the janitor upstairs. No, nobody by that name here. What's their family name? I said, Gandil? You don't know them? Of course not. They never go to the mosque. So I said, thank you for your time. I'm sorry, I must be in the wrong place. I turned around to walk away, and then one of the students, who happened to be from Malaysia, and he was wearing traditional Malaysian dress, short guy, Abdul Hanan, I'd find out his name later. He said to me, would you like to learn about Islam? I said, oh, yeah, sure. Why not? So he said, well, come on in. So I started to step in, and he said, please take off your shoes. We pray here. I thought, yeah, okay. All right. So I took off my shoes. So I walked in, and I sat down. And they said, what would you like to know about Islam? I said, well, I've been reading quite a bit about it. By that time, I had not only read the Quran, I had read several other books. And they told me, they started talking to me and saying some things, and I couldn't relate to any of it. And then finally Abdul Hanan said, after about 3 minutes into his conversation, the other student, his name was Muhammad Yusuf, he was Palestinian, and he was dressed in Western clothing. And Abdul Hanan said to me something about how when the angels take your souls when you die, they beat them and strain them out of their carcasses. Yeah, torture them. I remember when he said that, my response was, I think I gotta go. I think I have an appointment in my office. I didn't, but I thought that was just so lame. So I was ready to leave. And just then, as I'm excusing myself, the door opens. And now the skies have cleared and the sun is going down. And it's going down right behind the door. So the person who opens the door gets silhouetted. This brilliant silhouette of a human form. But it's just not any human form. This fellow has a long beard, and he has a turban on his head, and like granny glasses. And he has a cane. And he's wearing a thobe that comes down about calf length, and sandals. And I'm looking at him, and there's this biblical silhouette at the door. He looks like Moses coming out of the Sinai. So I thought, wow, I gotta talk to this guy. So he walks inside the door, he takes off his shoes, walks inside his door, holds his hands up like this as if he's waiting for a share of something, closes his eyes and mutters something. So then he resumes his normal posture, and then he walks over. Oh, no, he says something to Muhammad Yusuf. So this fellow also must be an Arab. Says something to Muhammad Yusuf. Muhammad Yusuf. This brother goes, he goes, Professor. So this brother walks over. As he's walking over, they tell me, that's Brother Hassan. Brother Hassan. His name is Hassan Zara. He walks over. He's obviously some sort of big shot in the masjid. But he's a student. He's pretty young. He's in his mid-20s. He walks over. He sits down next to me, puts his hand on my leg like that, and trying to get me to relax. And then he says, he could obviously see I was nervous. And then he says, what's your name? First person that asked me that. And it was a nice personal touch. Remember that when you talk to somebody about your faith. Treat them like a person. So he says, what's your name? I said, Jeff Lang. He said, what do you do here? I said, I work at the university. I'm in the mathematics department. He said, you're a professor? I said, yeah. And he looks at the other two. And then he says, so you came to hear something about Islam? I said, well, sort of. And he said, what would you like to know? And I told him what I knew about the religion through reading it. And he was quite impressed. And then he started telling me something, rules and regulations, one after another, one rule, another rule, another rule. Thinking, why is he giving me the rundown on the law? And then it was getting very dry, so I told him, well, thank you all for your time. Really appreciate it. I thought he would be more fascinating than he was, really. It turns out just another student with this fancy garb on. But he was a very spiritual man. But I could already sense that. But he said to me, so I told him, and I meant it this time, thank you for your time, but I really got to get back to my office now. And then he said to me, you have no other questions? And then I said no, and I started to get up. And then I remembered one, just came to my mind. I said, can you tell me what it feels like to be a Muslim? I used to ask good questions. Can you tell me what it feels like to be a Muslim? I mean, how do you feel in your relationship to God? How do you experience it? What do you experience? And he looked at me. Turns out this guy was sort of an expert at dawah, at talking to others about his faith. He was the head in the United States of the Tablighi Jama'ah. And he was one of two heads. There were two in the United States. He was one of them, even though he was a young student. But I could tell his question caught him off guard. My question caught him off guard because he didn't know how to answer it immediately. And then he lowered his head like this and thought for a while. And then he made another supplication. He closed his eyes, muttered something to himself. And then he started his answer to my question like this. I'll never forget it. It's as if it was both a call and a prayer. He started, Allah. And then he said, Allah is so merciful. And he loves us more than a mother loves, and the words he used, her baby child. He said, and yet, and then he said, and yet we can do nothing except by the will of Allah. When we breathe in, it is by His will. And when we breathe out, it is by His will. And when we take our foot off the ground to walk, to take a step, we'd never accomplish that except by Allah's will. And our foot would never reach the ground again except by His permission. And then he said, when a tiniest leaf falls from a tree, he wasn't even looking at me. His eyes were closed, and he was like talking to himself. When the tiniest leaf falls from the tallest tree and twists and turns on its journey to the ground, he said no segment of that journey would take place except by Allah's command. And then he said, and when we pray and put our nose to the ground, we feel a peace, a joy, a rest, coolness that's impossible to describe. You just have to experience it to know. And he got done. That was it. He looked disappointed. Like what I just said must not make sense. He looked disappointed. But you know, when I was listening to him, how much I wish we could trade places. So I could just know that spirituality, that yearning, that agony, that ecstasy, that yearning for his Lord. Of course, I was an American, he was an Arab. You know, I was a Westerner, I was an atheist. Of course, it wasn't possible. And then he said to me, because now I really was going to leave, he said to me, so would you like to become a Muslim? I looked at him like, are you nuts? I looked at him and said, no. I laughed. No, thank you. Actually, my hands were sweating, the back of my neck was getting wet, I felt panic, I felt my whole body getting hot, but I laughed it off. I said, no, not today. It's not for me. I just came to ask a question. And then he looked at me, you know, like he was looking through me. He said, I think you believe in this. Why don't you just try? And when he said that, before he said that, I could see my friends laughing at me. I could see myself trying to explain it to my mother, how I became a Muslim. I could see people stumbling over explanations to old friends of mine. Some of them were dead by now. But, you know, all these voices and heat rushing through my body. But when he said that, you know, I think you believe in it. Why don't you just try? Suddenly I just calmed down. I didn't feel anything anymore, just blank. And then I remembered my words my mom used to tell me. My mom used to tell me, son, if you believe in something, it had nothing to do with religion. If you believe in something, and you believe it really, truly in your heart, you should pursue it wherever it takes you, even if all of humanity is against you. And she said that was something about, that's a very German thing, because my parents are German, but everybody believes it anyway. So in any case, I remembered it, and I got comforted from it, and I looked at the three brothers there. Now there were two more that came in, Rossley and another brother from Malaysia. And I looked at them all the brothers there, 5 now, and I told them, yeah, I think I'll become a Muslim. And you should have seen their faces. They looked like the Apollo engineers after the first successful moon landing. You know, they were all congratulating each other and smiling, and a couple of them were, you know, hugging each other. this amazing reaction. I thought that they just had become Muslims. And just then the door opens, and another brother, biblical-looking brother, comes in the door, dressed just like Brother Hassan. He comes in, he's burly though, he looks like Burl Ives. I don't think you know who that is. An old American singer, big burly guy, sort of like Santa Claus. And his name is Mustafa, and they say, Mustafa, the brother wants to become a Muslim. So Mustafa comes running over and he grabs me, give me this big, you know, the Muslim triple hug, which I had never had up until that point. He give me a hug, and then Hassan says to him, he hasn't become a Muslim yet, Mustafa. Mustafa goes like this, let's go with me. Like he discovered something very precious, fragile. So then Hassan says to Mustafa, so tell him what to say, Mustafa. I wanted to give Mustafa the moment. So Mustafa then takes me through the Shahada very slowly. Ashhadu, Ashhadu, and that, he's whispering it. Can you go a little louder? I can't hear you. And then he repeats it for me in English. I testify that there's no God but God. So he says, are you ready? And I said, yes. So he takes me through it. Ashhadu, and I said, Ashhadu. And la ilaha, ilaha. And I tell you, with each word, I felt like I had been dying of thirst all those years. And with each word of the Shahada, it felt like somebody was dripping a drop of water into a parched throat. And so I became a Muslim. And I walked out of there that day a Muslim.